Welcome to the Beau Show, an NTD Television and Epoch TV production. Comics have always tested our imaginations. We see superheroes and imagine ourselves perhaps becoming one of those superheroes. They gave us something to aspire to. But now, in our modern woke society, comic makers have decided to make their superheroes less aspirational in terms of their superpowers and more aspirational in terms of their identity, especially minority identities that involve gender and sexual orientation. These are the things that are now being prized. For this reason, comics now have an agenda, and it targets children, of course, because these comics that I'm speaking about are not on Adult Swim. I've covered similar stories in the past with respect to the Drag Your Kid to Pride event in Dallas, and also Miss Universe declaring that not all people who menstruate are women. And of course, we know that Disney got thick into the fold as well, and it hurt them. But they have not backed off of it. They continue to make poor business decisions and not listen to their customer base. They consider themselves too big to fail. And perhaps more importantly, they allowed a small faction within their company to dictate to them how to run their business. Now, this is true of a number of companies, and they try to make this about equality. But it's not about that. It's about equity, which is forcing a minority idea on others to accept it. And so that's what all this so-called inclusion is all about. And they know if they can't convince adults to accept this, they'll go ahead and target kids who are far more impressionable. They want to start them early and get them conditioned to it. In one of the newest Disney Plus series, Baymax, they had this scene.
Excuse me, which of these products would you recommend?
Well, these are the tampons I usually use.
Thank you.
I prefer pads. They're more comfortable for me.
Thank you.
I always get the ones with wings.
Thank you.
Get unscented and bleach-free if you can.
Thank you.
Yo, my daughter loves these.
Thank you.
These might be easier if it's her first period.
Thank
These
you.
are really environmentally friendly.
So for one thing, this robot of unknown gender is shopping for tampons. I don't know the context of the scene, but it's already strange. And then you see a number of people making their recommendations about the tampons. And one of those people is clearly transgender, as evidenced by the transgender flag shirt that the character is wearing. This would naturally have a child wondering about why the character needs tampons, and might also confuse the kid about why it seems like a guy is suggesting what kind of tampon he uses. Baymax is an old Marvel comic character, so this type of transition, if we want to make this a play on words, has a certain social engineering effect. It takes a Marvel character and adapts it to certain socially desirable standards. This is where it can condition the impressionable mind. And of course, that is by design. You would think that content creators might at least first create a trans character within the adult scripted sphere and test the market out that way. But instead, they have chosen comics and children's animated shows where there might be less uproar and it can fly under the radar. I used to work for the Media Research Center, and they have a whole staff and team there that pore through content daily to see where subliminal messages and social engineering is happening. In modern entertainment, without research like theirs, we might never know. Now let's look at the classic cartoon character Popeye, the sailor who eats his spinach to make him strong. Popeye has nearly 100 years of existence, but it is destined for a woke makeover, or maybe we could call it a wokeover. Cartoonist Randall K. Milholland described the Popeye character as being gender fluid, citing old episodes in which the plot required Popeye to dress in drag. He said, quote, "I want to bring in more characters who aren't heterosexual. I don't live in that purely straight white world, and I don't think a lot of other people do either," unquote. So one big change will be Olive Oil's sister-in-law, Celinda Oil, who is now Afro-Latina. Celinda has traditionally been portrayed as a white woman with dark, bobbed hair. During the strip's early days, Popeye once met an orphaned girl who didn't have a mother. So Popeye dresses up as a woman and says, "I'm your mom now." And it's not a joke. It's Popeye being the kind character that he originally was. Someone who would do whatever he could for someone down on their luck, like an orphan. So Mulholland sees that retrospectively as Popeye being gender fluid. Popeye dressing as a woman has been usually seen as comic relief, but this modern interpretation that Mulholland is giving it is once again conforming to a certain social lens. And because Popeye's original world was what Mulholland called a straight white world, he wants to change that. Now, it's totally true. We don't live in a purely straight white world. We know that. America is quite diverse. But now the emphasis has been on heightening that diversity, and not just in the colors of skin. It's now about heightening gender and sexual diversity. It's not enough to be a man or a woman with superpowers. You have to be somewhere in between, which essentially diminishes all the beautiful differences that we have between us. What good does it do to be a strong woman that can rival a man's strength if you're no longer a woman? If Mulholland created a female version of Popeye, I could kind of understand it. But it's not about possessing the strength of a man. It's about actually blurring the lines of a man and a woman. A desirable fluidity. The older notion of Popeye putting on women's clothes to be a mother to an orphan is both comedic and endearing. Because to have a man take on a motherly role is very hard to do, as single dads out there will undoubtedly know. It's not about him dressing as a drag queen and embracing his inner woman. It's about him just trying to be a mother to a child. Since, as Dave Chappelle famously has said, every one of us out there on this earth had to come into the world through the legs of a woman. That is a biological fact. So when Mulholland says, if you go by today's definition, Popeye was gender fluid, that is indicative of the fact that someone or some group has decided what that definition is. And no, Popeye was not gender fluid. He was kind and he was trying to take on a maternal role for an orphan. That is not fluidity. Now let's take a look at the new Lightyear by Disney Pixar. You may remember the original Buzz Lightyear character created famously by Tim Allen. Allen is a conservative in real life, but he was unceremoniously replaced by the voice of Chris Evans. And another character in the film, Alicia Hawthorne, has a wife that she kisses. The scene was removed before it premiered, and then, due to the LGBTQ backlash, the kiss was reinstated. The LA Times writes, quote, "More recently, Lightyear's queer representation has attracted more attention as it has led to the film being banned or canceled from screening in countries such as the United Arab Emirates and Malaysia that disapproved of its inclusion. Not to mention the increasingly loud conservative voices that try to foment irrational outrage over any acknowledgement of the actual reality of LGBTQ people existing," unquote. See, this is classic liberal logic. They think that conservatives are so afraid of people different from them that they freak out when they see a gay character. No. It's not that. It's that there's an agenda to it. In other words, ask these questions. Why is there a kiss? Does there need to be a kiss? Who is doing the kissing, and why is it pivotal to the plot? And if she didn't kiss someone, especially another female, would that make her any less of a person, or a hero, or even less of a diverse person? And maybe here's another way to look at it. Would you kiss your significant other repeatedly in front of someone else's kids? Isn't kissing supposed to be a shared, personal, intimate moment between two people, not for public consumption? So when there's a kiss, it actually is significant because it is depicting a very personal act, regardless of who is doing it. The aim, then, seems to be to normalize the kissing and the same gender's kissing. This is why parents have a legitimate concern about hypersexualization being taught in schools. The Lightyear producers made a big to-do about this character not being in a romantic situation with Buzz, so they felt they accomplished two goals by making her queer for representation purposes also, and also being in a loving relationship with her wife so as to prevent any possible romance with Buzz's character. A producer of the film said, quote, "I don't know any loving, lasting couples that don't have some amount of intimacy. Alicia's coming home to her 40th anniversary party. The most natural and organic thing would be to kiss your spouse when you get home. We just wanted something that felt authentic," unquote. So see, the producers understand the intimacy of it, and they feel that showing that personal intimacy to children is fine. I think many times they forget the maturity level of their audience. But because the focus is now on LGBTQIA+ kids, they want to ensure they are allowing them to see themselves in the characters too, hence the growing number of comic book characters. This very well could place undue pressure on kids who now see transgenderism as desirable to potentially begin taking gender-changing drugs that could be irreversible. Now, Lightyear was a box office flop, while Top Gun: Maverick, a tale of classic alpha male patriotism, has soared at the box office, only to be rivaled by another all-American alpha hero movie, Elvis. Minions also outperformed Lightyear by a long shot. It should be a clue to investors that the American consumer is more interested in these types of stories and characters than these socially engineered woke ones.